Hello, friends, and welcome to this edition of Coming In for a Landing. I am your host, Paul Hudrick. And again, I am joined by another very special co-host. We'll call him a freelance extraordinaire, but he has covered the Sixers for a great length of time. I don't want to age him, so I won't, go too nuts with it. But a guy I've met through my time at NBC Sports Philadelphia, that's the great Gordie Jones. Gordie, thank you so much for coming on, man.
Thanks for having me, Paul. It's a pleasure.
And you and I, like I said, we made our acquaintance through when you freelanced at NBC Sports Philadelphia, and I was there, and I was coming through the ranks.
That's right.
So that's how you and I have gotten to know each other, is through our time with the Sixers. So what better subject to talk about than this year's Philadelphia 76ers? And
Indeed.
through 4 games, we got new coach, new front office, some new players. Through 4 games, I'm going to ask you, first of all, what do you like from what you've seen so far?
I like the feel of the team, and they needed a makeover and they needed a new start. Obviously, they got that with a new coach. Certainly the best coach available and the best executive available. Obviously, there's still the thought that it's far from a complete picture because it's so early. They had so little preparation time. It's really a work in progress. So we don't know what the finished product is going to look like. Certainly, Daryl is going to make some more moves before it's all said and done to complete the picture. And certainly there's going to be more cohesion as we go along, you would think. So that'll be interesting to watch, just the way it progresses, because obviously they needed a fresh start, and they have that now, but it's only a start. That's how I would evaluate it.
No, 100%. A lot of people you see are kind of already jumping to conclusions 4 games in, which is just
Right.
insane, I guess is the best way to put it. Like, you can't judge a new team with a new coach, a new front office, new pieces. You can't judge that with 4 games. I get some of the old frustrations creep back up from time to time, and I think you make an
Right.
excellent point when you talk about that. This is not a finished product. We
Mm-hmm.
know Daryl Morey. We know his reputation. We know he's not going to sit still. He's going to
Mm-hmm.
look for ways to improve this team throughout the year. So I think that is for sure. And I agree with you too on just like the vibe. It's just a different vibe, different
Yeah.
energy this year.
Yeah.
100% I'm seeing that so far. I'm loving what I'm seeing. For me, I don't love that he missed the game already, but Joel Embiid and his fitness level, running
Yeah.
up and down the floor, getting early post position. I think he looks phenomenal through the 3 games he's played. They look like a completely different team when he's on the floor and when he is not. Speaking of when he's not on the floor, I'm going to ask you what has stood out that maybe you don't like so far. What do you think you'd like to see maybe a little different going forward?
Well, they're not shooting it from three very well, and especially
That's putting
last
it very nicely.
Toronto. My goodness. I mean, and I'll be honest with you. While they addressed that to some degree, when they brought in Seth Curry, when they brought in Danny Green, I'm not a complete believer that they've solved the issue. I think they still need to bring in more shooting. I think in the present day NBA, you can never have enough of it. And I think that they still need to address it more. Um, that said, I mean, in some ways, the three that Seth made late in the game last night kind of almost changes your entire perspective of everything, the 46, 47 minutes that preceded it. It almost made you think, okay, that's why I mean, literally, I said, okay, that's why they got him for that moment and that shot. I mean, it was the JJ action, him coming out of the corner, getting the dribble handoff. Then they run pick and roll with Joe. Joe takes a couple dribbles. The defense converges, and he kicks it out. And, and Seth's wide open. And that's exactly why they got him, for that kind of play in that kind of situation. And I think that's obviously sustainable from what he's accomplished before he got here. And you would think that would be sustainable from this point forward.
I heard
But
Nick. Well,
but
yeah.
at the same time, they need more. They need more of it. They
Yeah.
need
Yes.
more guys that can shoot that shots like that.
It was interesting. I listened to Nick Nurse talk after the game, and he was asked specifically about that play. And
Right.
how do you let Seth Curry get wide open? You know what I mean? And then Nick Nurse is like, well, how do you, then if someone wouldn't have double teamed Joel Embiid in the post, you would say, how do you let Joel Embiid get single team? So,
Right.
but that's great for the Sixers because that's a clear pick your poison situation.
Right.
And I
Right.
think and what I talked about earlier today when I was on 97.3 with my radio hit is I love that Nick Nurse is a guy who has always, regardless of Marc Gasol, Nick Nurse has always schemed very well for Joel Embiid. And
Yeah.
I thought he handled it exceptionally well Tuesday night. I thought he was much better recognizing it. He did have a couple turnovers, but for the most part, I thought he played smarter than he'd ever had. And the
Mhm.
fact that it got better as the game went on, I think was
Yeah.
extremely encouraging.
Are you
But
saying that he quarterbacked the gym? Are you going to go there?
quarterback to Jim. No.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
But no, but he and you see that, and that's obviously, yeah, that's super encouraging. That's like you said, that's what Daryl Morey, when he got
Right.
Seth Curry, that's exactly who he was picturing.
Right.
That's what he's picturing with Danny Green, which we haven't quite seen quite yet.
Right.
There's some factors there. We'll hope that we'll see what happens in the future once he gets his legs under him and all that. Not the youngest guy anymore, and coming off the championship and all that. It's not, and it wasn't an easy offseason for Danny Green either, with the two, getting traded twice, having to
Yes.
come to the team late, all that factors in. But I do agree with you too that they need more. Not only do I think they need more shooting, I think they certainly need more shot creation, 100%. And I thought that before the season. So this isn't me just reacting to 4 games. To me, that the 4 games have just kind of solidified for me. Yes, they need more shot creation. They need another guy that can do that on the perimeter. I want to ask about the hot topic, because everyone wants to talk about Ben Simmons and where he fits offensively. I mean, there's no questioning last night what was game film. If they're, for his defensive player of the year candidacy, you want to see what he did to Pascal Siakam and just frustrated the hell out of him all night, which he has done the last couple of seasons. And just you see the guys, the different kind of players he's defended, whether it's Bradley Beal or Russell Westbrook or RJ Barrett or, and now Siakam, just a different variety of guys. And he's played them all at a very high level. But offensively, I hate to say it, but it's the same stuff we've seen before, right?
That was certainly the troubling part of last night, that, the first 3 quarters or so, it kind of reminded me too much of last year with the stagnation and the shots that they were getting or not making, or it seemed like too much of a flashback to me. So
right.
that's one of those things that we mentioned before. That's one of those things that they have to figure out. Where does he fit? How does he fit? I mean, I remember there was a playoff game against the Nets a couple years ago where he ran pick and roll as the screener with Tobias Harris, and it worked really well. So I don't know if you can do that, if you can incorporate that in there somewhere, but that seems like that's at least should be an option that should be considered, since, the pick and roll is, part of Doc's offense, a much bigger part than it was with Brett Brown. So to me, that makes some sense. Use him as a screener. Why not? I mean, he's a versatile guy, and you would think that would lead to a lot of good things, because Tobias can obviously do that. And Tobias has great familiarity with the way Doc does things from their days with the Clippers. So you would think that would at least be an option, or something that, they can incorporate as they go along.
Right. And, and obviously that was what Brett experimented with last year by playing him more at the 4. And it's interesting because Doc I called Ben Simmons a point guard to Doc Rivers last night, and he corrected me and said, well, no, I view him as a basketball player. But it's funny because he's not playing him like that. He's playing him like a point guard. So he can semantics say whatever he wants. He's playing him as a traditional point guard. And I think you make an excellent point too with that, with what does it hurt to maybe use him more, especially in a half court. I get it in transition. The guy is a freight train. Let him run. I get that. If he pulls the ball off the rim and then can push the ball up and find a guy on an open 3 or get to the basket, by all means do that. But in a half court set, there's no denying the guy struggles. So why not? Why not run a little bit more pick and roll? I was encouraged by the fact that I thought he was a little more aggressive getting to the rim. Finishing was another story, but at least he was, when he got space, it wasn't a situation where I felt like, hey man, you have to shoot it. It was, hey, I see this space, I'm going to eat it up and I'm going to try to get something at the rim. I like that strategy, but I would just like to see him be better and more efficient at the rim. So I guess in that vein, for me, when I coming into the season, I viewed this team as like a 4 or a 5 seed. And I think that second round of the playoffs was probably the best I could say, that I thought was like the most optimistic, best case scenario. Do you see that, like with Ben Simmons, with this iteration, what we've seen so far? Would you say that that's probably fair? Like their ceiling is probably a 4 seed and then a second round exit?
Yeah, because there's a lot of teams out there, Milwaukee, Brooklyn, obviously. I mean, even obviously Boston, maybe Toronto, although they're 0-3. So I don't know what we should make of them necessarily. So, but again, I go back to the fact that it's so early. I mean, considering it's 4 games in, they only played 2 preseason games. I mean, normally they'd have 2 more preseason games to kind of work out some of the kinks. So that's my one word of caution. My other one would be just the fact that we know Daryl's going to do something more, that there's going to be something that happens before that trade deadline, which is in March this year. So we'll see how that, works itself out, and whether they find another piece to throw in the mix, because it's obviously a really incomplete thing. I think there are a couple things I think about. One of them is, how do they guard point guards, which is obviously a problem last night because Kyle Lowry was really good, and he's always really good. But who guards the point guards? I mean, Seth Curry does a lot of things well, but defense isn't one of them. And they had him on point guards a lot last night, and that could be a problem. I mean, especially when you get in a series, playoff series against a really good team. I mean, how do you guard the point guard?
Multiple point guards, really, too. And you look at Kyle Lowry and Van Vliet, two kind of, smaller the guys that can play more like point guards. So, and there are going to be teams that throw lineups like that at you, like the Nets when, Dinwiddie's hurt now, but even like Irving and LeVert, when that's the backcourt, that's a really difficult matchup when you have to play Seth Curry. So I do agree with you. Yeah, I agree with that standpoint. And
which is another kind of long-standing problem, actually. Just guarding, point guards in particular, but really good perimeter guys in general. So, and it gets back to the whole thing, about they have a kind of a glut of wing players, which is lessened by the fact that Furkan's out right now. But if you take Furkan and Matisse and you put them together, you have one good player, but separately, they have glaring weaknesses. Furkan can't guard. And Matisse, last night it was really troubling to me because I didn't see a lot of that defensive energy that he provided last year, and he didn't seem all that assertive offensively either. It seemed like he was kind of feeling his way a little bit.
I thought defensively, I thought he was solid. I thought that because my issue was when I saw that preseason game in Boston, from a discipline standpoint, defensively, I thought he was he was bad. Really bad. But I thought last night he was a little bit more disciplined. And I thought, almost in a weird way, the fact that he was quiet defensively was almost a good thing for me, because that meant he wasn't taking unnecessary chances. He wasn't fouling. So but I hear you, as far as that impact he had last year where he was getting in passing lanes so much and really, creating havoc. I didn't see that last night, but I thought from a discipline standpoint, I thought he was solid. But I do agree that this team is a guard short, to put it simply, a guard short. But is it going to be that move? Is it going to be a small move for a just one piece guard, or are we talking Ben Simmons going to the Houston Rockets for James Harden? I'm curious what your take is on that. The Rockets are 0-2, but James Harden has looked very, very good. And you saw a lot of people point to the way, and again, we don't want to overreact to what we see through 4 games, but you see how stagnant the offense looked at times without Joel Embiid. Where do you see a James Harden trade? Obviously, to me, I see no package where Ben Simmons is not the centerpiece for Harden. So I guess given that, is that something, do you entertain that? Do you say, hell yes, I want that? How do you see that?
I don't know. I have mixed feelings about it. I mean, Harden is just a really unique offensive player, but maybe I'm just jaded by the way they play offense, where it's one guy dribbling for 15 seconds before he decides exactly how he wants to attack the defense, while 4 other guys are arrayed around him and twiddling their thumbs. I don't know. Maybe that has me jaded. And also the fact he's obviously not in the greatest condition right now. I mean, I was listening to somebody on the radio today, and they were saying they called him Jimbo Slice, which I thought was rather amusing. So I don't know.
Well, they might have weights in the strip club. I don't know. They have hoops in the strip clubs. I don't know. It's been a while since I've been to one, Gordie, so I couldn't tell you.
So I don't know. I'm not as bullish on that trade as others are. I respect the fact, as our departed coach said, I hear the question, but I don't know. I don't know if I'm particularly bullish on James Harden as some others are. I mean, he is 31, right? And
31,
25, 24. So I don't know. Do you want to do that? I mean, do we want to do that before we fully understand what Simmons is? I don't know. I'm a little hesitant about that. I mean, they threw away X number of seasons to get in position to get him. So shouldn't you be patient enough to see exactly what he becomes? I mean, because consider this example. Okay, I get it. They had to get rid of Markelle Fultz, but look what he is now. I mean, would you take him back in a second?
Pretty darn good.
I think you would.
Pretty darn good.
No,
and I think I mostly agree with you that I am torn because yes, you can look like just taking that Toronto game for an example. You could look at that first half and say they were terrible offensively. When Joel Embiid was off the floor, they couldn't get a shot. Fair enough. That's 100% correct. You throw James Harden in that mix, and that changes everything. Right. At the same time, the Raptors scored 37 points in the second half. Pascal Siakam went 8 of 23. Right. Does that happen if Ben Simmons isn't here and James Harden? You're given and you're taken. I mean, and that's the way a trade is supposed to work, right? You got to give to get. So it's just if you're the Sixers, and I get some people have like Joel Embiid is just as much to me a defensive player of the year type candidate when he is healthy and when he is right. He's certainly in that mix as well. So I mean, he's an elite defensive player. Danny Green, I think again. He is when he is right, when he is healthy, he is a very good wing defender. I think Tobias Harris has really improved since he's been here. I thought he was excellent defensively, even against the Raptors. But you still have Seth. So, like, if that's your starting front court, right, is Seth Curry and James Harden against Kyle Lowry and Fred VanVleet. That's a really rough matchup.
James does not expend a lot of energy on that end.
So I mean, it's taking all of that into account, and then the age is a thing. Yeah, James Harden is 31. He can walk in what, a year and a half. He can walk. Ben Simmons is 24 years old, and he is not going anywhere. He's here for 5 years. So I don't know. As much as some people, it's to me, I think it's a. I mean, I don't think I know. It's a recency bias. They see James Harden right now scoring a ton of points in Houston. They see Ben Simmons struggling in half-court offense. So they think, yes, let's do that. But again, you think, and I get it, everyone wants a championship. Everyone wants to win right now. But I think you make an excellent point too when you say everyone was so patient waiting for Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons to arrive. And now that they're here, they expect a magic wand to come. It doesn't click like that for everybody. And sometimes the fact that it's clicking for Ben Simmons to a point where he is a legitimate defensive player of the year candidate, it's a pretty good starting point. I mean,
and he can guard 4 spots really.
Yes. You know? So he might be the most versatile defender in the NBA.
Yeah. So it's not to be taken lightly. I mean, that does matter. And he fills up the other columns too. Maybe he doesn't score a ton, but he does fill up the other columns. And
most assisted 3-pointers last year. So theoretically, with the shooting that you've surrounded him with, that number should go up. It hasn't because the team hasn't shot that well, but theoretically that should go up as the season goes on. Right. And perhaps if you require someone else, which is where I want to go next, let's take James Harden off the table for a minute and let's look more. I don't even want to say realistically because I guess James Harden is realistic, but a more modest trade, perhaps. Is there any guy in the league that you look around that you think is realistic, could be had, that would fit here that's not James Harden?
Yeah, this is not at all a sexy name, but this is one that I've always had in the back of my mind, and that's E'Twaun Moore. He's sitting at the end of Phoenix's bench. He's a 39% career 3-point shooter. I mean, he's not a great player, but you don't need him to be great. You just need him to be good enough. You just need him to be another guy to put out there to space the floor and make a shot when the ball comes to him. And I think he would. I think he would come really cheaply. I think he makes a lot of sense for them.
I like that name.
This is one because I just love the guy when he was here. Redick he's shooting 29% from 3. I'd still love to see him back here just because I know how well he fits with what they got.
Absolutely. No, and if you put him in this mix, right. So let's just say, I mean, depending on how you would do it, if you bring him off the bench, whatever. Yeah. And you see what he brings out of Joel Embiid and what he brings out of Ben Simmons. I would certainly be open to that. They have the contracts where they can make that work pretty easily with New Orleans, depending on what New Orleans would want. He is expiring, and New Orleans doesn't have the look of a playoff team.
Does not.
at least early on.
And think about this too. I mean, last year in the playoffs, basically Matisse, his plus minus was a disaster. Furkan, you couldn't play him. You know that JJ, you can put him on a court in a playoff game and he's going to give you something. If nothing else, he makes the defense respect him. And I just think even at his age, well, we all know he takes care of himself, and we all know that, you know, what kind of guy he is, how hard he works. And I just think that he's just got the demeanor to handle a big situation because he's been in it a million times.
He could have that Bellinelli effect.
We don't know. We don't know if they can handle it. We just don't know.
Right. He could have kind of that Bellinelli effect that Bellinelli had when he came here on a buyout, except at a higher level, because you already know it works, and because he's just a better player than Bellinelli, and his off-ball movement just creates so much for every. And I like the idea too. So I mean, you probably couldn't play him and Seth together, but I kind of like that idea of having a guy in JJ who's really good off the ball, running around the court, and you have a guy in Seth who can handle the ball a little bit more. You put him more in pick and rolls and things like that. It's an interesting dynamic. So if that's a possibility, it's funny because I have a very short list here, and JJ Redick's name is on it. Number one on my list, and this is a guy I've loved for a while, and there were rumors that the Sixers were interested in this past offseason. Patty Mills. Patty Mills would be such a terrific fit here. Yeah, and I think you could start him. You could bring him off the bench, and I would just love him in pick and rolls with Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons. I think he would take, if you put him in a starting lineup, to what we talked about earlier, he would take so much pressure off Ben Simmons, shoots the three at a high clip,
and handle it a little,
and talk about character. Great guy, good leader. He's won.
That's a great name.
Everything off the charts of Patty Mills. And if you look for the Spurs angle, he's an expiring deal. So maybe they look to see what they can get for him. I know Popovich loves him, so he might not be so willing to part with him. And he might try to bring him back. But they're obviously going in a different direction. That's a rebuilding team. So maybe they could swing a deal for Patty. I personally, that would be number one on my list. I've loved him for a long time.
That's a really good name.
A lower tier name, which would be, he would be I guess you would call it low risk, kind of high reward guy. Kind of like what you said with Moore, a guy maybe wouldn't cost you that much. Malik Monk, in Charlotte right now. He had COVID, so he's a little bit far behind. So he's not in their rotation right now, but he is healthy enough to play, but hasn't been. He flashed a little bit last year. This is a guy who was, a lottery pick and can provide. He provides what you need. He can create off the bounce. He can shoot. Again, just take a flyer on him. Right? What would it? I doubt it would cost much. Another guy, again, he's expiring, so it's not like it's for Charlotte, a team that's not going to be a good team this year. That's a rebuilding team. If they don't believe in Malik Monk long term, maybe you can steal him away for a second round pick or something. Maybe you can work something out. So that would be another guy I think would just make a lot of sense. Just fit what they have, and just you could bring him off the bench and see how that goes. And if it doesn't work out, I don't think the investment would be that rich where you would be heartbroken if it didn't pan out.
Your names are a lot better than my names.
Listen, I got to be honest. Like Patty Mills, that's like always my name. That a guy I want on the Sixers because I love his game and I just think
too. I like him a lot.
He would be so perfect here. When he was a free agent a couple of years ago, when he re-signed with the Spurs, that was the guy I like. He was 100% at the top of my list for a guy they should pick up, but. Alas, we'll see. Maybe Daryl. If anyone can make it happen, it's Daryl Morey.
I would think.
So here we are. New Year's coming up. This wonderful year of 2020 that we've seen. So I want to ask you, first of all, kind of your favorite moment, like for the Sixers of 2020. There were a lot of not so great moments for all of us, but for the Sixers in particular as well. What was your favorite moment of the last year for the Sixers?
It's actually three moments in one. There was a stretch. There was a game in January and two in February where Furkan had 24 against Chicago, 34 against Memphis, and 31 against Chicago. And we all know how beloved he is by his teammates. And for me, it was one of the few moments in the entire season of pure joy. It seemed like so much of it was such a slog. So much of it was disappointing. so much of it was, oh, these guys haven't met expectations, and it just seemed like such a labor through the end. And that was just pure joy because he was going off. Everybody was happy for him because they knew how far he had come. And that, to me, those were the best moments, those three wrapped in one, because, you know, as I said, everybody on the team likes him, and I think they were really happy for him. So that was really kind of magical, whereas the rest of the season was,
Yeah.
just
I like it. I like it. So mine is also multiple wrapped in one, but it has nothing to do with anything that happened on the court. It is the week period in which they got Doc Rivers and then they got Daryl Morey.
Yeah, that's good.
Because that, to me, those were franchise altering moves. And listen, I was a Brett Brown guy. I always thought he was a good guy, a pretty good coach. Last year, it was time to move on. I think everybody would agree that last year, that was it. He lost the team a little bit, and it was time to move on.
Mm-hmm.
But to replace him with a guy like Doc, who's just also a class act, great guy, will give you great answers. And then as far as on the court, obviously has won a championship, had a lot of, like, who cared about the Clippers before Doc Rivers got there? Obviously, some of the players factored into that too, but he did such a great job out there and making that team relevant again. So I thought that was a hell of a hire. And then Daryl Morey was the best, was the best GM in all of basketball. I really believe that. I know we never won a championship, but what he's been able to do, the way he's kind of been ahead of the curve with so many things, and what he was able to do around James Harden, I think he is so creative and so smart. And I think you already see bits and pieces of that with the Al Horford move, with the Josh Richardson to get Seth Curry, with that move. And I think I think he's only going to get better. I think he's only going to continue to make moves that are going to help Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons going forward. And I believe him when he says, I want to see how it plays out, and I want to build it around those two guys. I believe him when he says that. I truly do. Will that change, 40 games into the season? Maybe. But right now, I believe him when he says that. And then the other thing is a New Year's resolution for the Sixers. It can be for the team specifically. It can be a player, a coach, front office, whatever.
Here's my New Year's resolution. And we, of course, the cliche one would be to say that Ben Simmons starts shooting threes. My New Year's resolution for him specifically is no more of these off-season videos showing. I'm tired of those because he's teased us with those for the last however many years. I don't want to see another one. I'm tired of them. I just don't want any more. Until he actually starts shooting them in the games. No to the videos. Never.
I like that. An awful lot. For me, the resolution is something we already touched on, and it's Daryl Morey, go get another shot creator. That's got to be the resolution, is find another shot creator. Because I think, again, like, just the thoughts that dance in my head, thinking of Patty Mills either starting, in that case, I guess you bring Danny Green off the bench.
I like that.
And then with Patty Mills, Seth, Ben, Tobias, Embiid, I love that starting five. Or if you want to keep the starting five intact, and then your second unit is Patty Mills and Shake Milton in your backcourt, I absolutely love that too. So that would be my resolution. Daryl Morey, find another playmaker, find another guy who can create off the bounce. And I as far as guys on the list, Patty Mills number one for me. And then lastly, last week I forgot to do it. When I had Devon Givens on. I did do it 2 weeks ago when I had Danny Palmel's on. But I wanted to highlight small businesses, places that could use the help right now, could use the love right now. I know my reach isn't that great, but it's something. And I suppose every little bit counts. And Gordie, I know you have a business that you would like to highlight. So please go ahead.
Well, there's a little story associated with this. Several years ago, after a playoff game, I was walking away from a crowd around Charles Barkley, and he goes to me, "Yeah, go on back to the boonies." So as we all know, I live in Lidditz, which is in Lancaster County. So there's a bookstore, an independent bookstore called Aaron's Books. So for everybody traveling from your neck of the woods to mine, I recommend that they stop at Aaron's Books at Lidditz, Pennsylvania. I'm sure that'll lead to a parade through the streets. They'll be overrun.
Hey, every little bit counts, Gordie, you know?
That's right. That's right.
Every little bit counts. So for me, I am again representing Tonewood Brewery, which is my favorite brewery. I'm actually, as soon as we wrap, Gordie, I am going to Tonewood Brewery in Oakland, New Jersey, and picking up a new beer they just put out.
Nice.
And I cannot wait to drink it. I'm very excited about that. But also, I want to highlight my local watering hole. It's called Dom's Tavern in Belmar in South Jersey. I can literally walk there, which is dangerous as all hell, but they have the best wings. I will say it. I know everyone wants to debate wing spots. They have the best wings. They are known for their wings. So if you know people in South Jersey, you mention the name Dom's, they will know what you are talking about. Also, an excellent craft beer selection as well, with Tonewood beer on tap and many South Jersey really good craft beer. So good spot, and all those places they could really use the help right now. So if you have the means to do so, please do. Gordie, thank you so much, man. I really appreciate you hopping on. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you, Paul, and best to you.
Thank you. All right. And thank you guys all so much for checking out the Coming In for a Landing podcast. I am your host, Paul Hudrick, and I will talk to you in the new year.